Awakening initially happens in those gaps where there is no fixation. There is not this felt contraction of being a separate self. And the beautiful thing is that these gaps are absolutely common. And they are quite ordinary. They happen all the time. And you are deeply familiar with these gaps in your usual experience of being a separate self. It happens, for example, when you're sneezing, or when you are laughing, or when you are seeing something really beautiful. What happens in those moments is that the fixation which produces the sense of being a separate self simply drops. And what's left when that fixation drops? All that's left is just pure awakeness appearing as body, mind, and world. You might be thinking that this is too strong of a claim, that these gaps aren't all that special. Well, they aren't special in the sense that they happen all the time. But they are also quite special because they provide a sort of entryway to clearly recognizing your true nature of just pure awareness. What happens usually is that when we experience this kind of gap in our grasping, this gap in our fixation, we immediately forget about it and fall back into a new fixation and get lost in a new identification. And so we dismiss this experience we just had of being no one, of just being pure awakeness. These gaps in our usual orientation therefore go unnoticed. But the smart thing to do is to utilize these gaps when they occur and to really rest in them. So when there is this opening, when that fixation of the separate self falls away, instead of falling back into a new fixation, simply drop any effort and rest in that unbounded openness. At this point, doing anything or trying to stabilize anything is simply too much. You are in that awakeness. The presence of it is self-evident, and you are recognizing this awake presence simply by being it. So nothing is required. That gap in your fixation will just maintain itself naturally. And once you are resting in that, you can also begin to realize something very important. It can become obvious that recognizing your true nature, recognizing this centerless pure awareness, is absolutely effortless. You don't need to do anything to maintain it. You can begin to recognize that as this awakeness, you are not separate from anything. Anything that arises in your field of experience is just the modulation of your own essential nature of awareness. And so in this way, you become more and more familiar with the experience of just being what you are essentially, of just being and resting in this pure awareness, which is your essential being. And the more you use these gaps when they naturally occur, the more there is this confidence that your true nature is really like that. It really is centerless. It really is always whole and at peace. It's always unbounded. It's always fully intimate with whatever is occurring. So over time, as a result of this clarity of recognition, these gaps of grasping and fixation seem to become larger and larger, meaning that the time you spend in fixation becomes less and less and less. But remember that you don't force this to happen. You simply rely on all of these natural gaps in your experience, those moments where you have not yet fixated on a new object of attention. When those occur, simply open up, relax, settle into them, and realize these qualities of your essential being. And then beautifully, once that is the case, the more clear that becomes, a different operating system for interacting with the world becomes available. You begin to notice that interacting with the world doesn't require you to fall back into fixation and identification. Quite the contrary. You can both recognize your true nature clearly and be fully involved with whatever you are doing. So the sense of that is that your activities arise like a wave out of the ocean. You are fully involved, but not attached. Fully with whatever is happening, but not fixated around it. You are not dissociated away from what's going on, but you're rather being very intimate with whatever is in your field of experience. And not because you're forcing that to happen, but simply because this is how awareness is. This is how you are. This is simply the quality of your essential being. So really, this is an effortless path. What you may notice as well over time is that these gaps can be created quite deliberately. If you have watched any of my pointing out videos, you may have noticed that there are these parts where I instruct awareness to turn around and to look for the center in experience. And what happens if you do that? Well, there is a gap in your usual fixation. The identification in the center of your experience drops away for a second. And so in this way, you have almost created this gap deliberately. And after having created that gap, you don't try to dissociate away, and you don't fall back into identification. You simply drop, relax, and settle into this openness. Once you are there, you drop any effort and recognize that it is fully established with no effort whatsoever. And once that becomes clear, there is really not much more to do than to simply enjoy it.